Welcome everyone to this week's IPLD sync meeting. It's April the 12th, 2021. And as every week we go over the stuff that people worked on and or haven't actually worked on, but have news from other teams and share it here. I start with myself. So I was still working on this JS multi-formats in JS IPFS thing. It's still the same pull requests. And the plan looks like this. So the problem, or like one big thing is also that in JS IPFS, we also have plenty of examples and they use some other bundler for their stuff. And with the whole effort of getting the JS multi-format stuff in is also combined with the problem that JS multi-formats is written as ES6 modules, and combining ES6 modules with common JS modules in JavaScript is already difficult, and it gets even more difficult if you have TypeScript typing in them. And the problems are all over the place, but also certainly one is the bundlers, because often they do either support well CommonJS or E6 modules and so on. So this might be difficult. And so my pull requests are probably good enough. Not all tests pass yet, but it should be possible to build the examples and run the examples. So we could at least try out if this whole new system can work together. And hopefully the result will be that it works. And then we can polish those pull requests again. And if I say we, I mean the others, because finally I'm moving full-time off to the other team, so I won't do JavaScript IPLD stuff anymore. And also the maintenance responsibilities I have are moved over to Aching Brain and Rod. And we will do it just like on an ongoing basis. So whenever there is something that needs a release that I'm responsible for, I will then hand over the maintainership to them and they will do the release, because there's basically no point of proactively going through all the repositories I might be the maintainer of, because there are plenty. And there might be even ones where we don't release the next few years. So that's the approach. And hopefully those two PRs will eventually be merged. We'll see. Other news, which probably Rod would have talked about if he would be there. He spent time on JS multi-formats, JS Stack BB, and JS Stack CBOR, making them compatible with this whole TypeScript thing and CommonJS and E6. There are PRs currently, and I think they look good. They still need approval, but then I think when he's back, those will be merged, and then again the PRs mentioned previously can also be updated, and then we should have typing properly done for the whole new JS multi-formats stack that we have. Yes, so that's all I have. Next on the list is Eric.
Okay, I get to be a little bit excited this week after some doldrum times, because I found some tooling that I have wanted to find for the longest time, and I'm happy with it. And we're going to get some more docs and specs website work for me. I found a new static site generator tool that I'm very excited about that has, it just checks all the boxes and features. It is still JavaScript based, so we can do all sorts of extensions in there. Like we can bring along the syntax highlighter extensions. It'll still use highlight.js. But it's also multiple orders of magnitude base 10 faster than the ViewPress shenanigans that we were previously experiencing, which makes me very happy. And it has much, 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 much trimmer outputs as well. It doesn't throw a bunch of... I'm not going to talk about how I feel about ViewPress anymore on camera. Let's put it that way. this new tool I'm checking out is called 11TJS, and it's just good. I've done some demo prototype work with it already. I've tried 8 different static site generators to the degree of hands-on trying it, not just reading about it, but built the demo. 8. This one is good. I'm so happy. So anyway, so I'm going to be doing a bunch of work on that. My dream is still to be unifying a bunch of different repos as I go through this and getting more of this content in one place. I will still keep things organized into docs directories versus specs directories because the writing style and the audience and even the contribution flows might be rather distinct for those things, but you can get them in one repo. And then also do a bunch more documentation of all the other stuff that is in our periphery. Like I want to start gathering links to all the different cool tools that are not in core libraries per se, but like are in our ecosystem. So I'm looking forward to that. And I will also warn everyone in the area that this will involve me chasing people about merging any PRs that are in the specs repos or the docs repos or anything around there, because I want to unify all these repos and I want to bring the Git history along as much as possible. So I'm going to hope that we can merge every single thing or decide to close it because I want to drag them all into one place. So open PRs are going to be my enemy for a while. So lots of people got lots of emails about that from GitHub, I think, and I'm going to keep chasing people. And it's a darn shame Rod is off today because he has several. And yeah, that's my big excitement.
Thanks. And next one is Will.
Cool. So we're continuing sort of in a slower way to land the remaining things that need to happen in this IPLD and IPFS work stream. And in doing these things and code reviews and so forth, a couple of things that came up as interesting. There's a sharness test that uses JSON to make a DAG-PB block within IPFS. Now that we're using IPLD prime codecs, it has become apparent that we can no longer do this because our JSON codec does not actually implement the part of the DAG-JSON spec in which you can have bytes. So you cannot make the bytes field in the data key of a DAG-PB thing. And so it then complains and will never allow you to represent the schema that one could turn into a DAG-PB object. It would be nice if this was possible still upon update. Puppy eyes. Okay, so that was the request one. Second thing that I want to note that we ran into when talking with the dean about interfaces is we have selectors in IPLD prime as like a compiled thing that has a data representation that is a node, and then from the node you parse the selector and you get a selector. There's a reason on things like the request to fetch a DAG based on a selector that what you might want is the data representation of it, because that still may go across a network and need to be in its data format before it is executed and turned into a selector. Like you may need the data representation of it. But one thing you'll note is when you do that, you end up with an interface where it's like fetch of node comma node as your type signature. And then the person who gets the type signature hint is like, which one is the selector and which one is the DAG root node that I'm doing, because these are the same types. And so question, is there a way to take a selector and get back to the node? Because what we want is a selector. And if there would be a convenient way to go back to the node representation of that selector, then we could be clearer in our interface usage. So a thing to think about. And then separately from that, there's been some talk in Go data transfer / GraphSync land that you're receiving a bunch of blocks. Right now, the way that happens is it puts it into a Badger data store. And then at the end, it runs a traversal over that and serializes it into a car. And the overhead of writing it once into Badger and then reading it all again and putting it into a car and having the Badger not clean up necessarily has led to complexity and people being somewhat unhappy. And so there was a request of, can we stream it directly into a car as we receive blocks, keep an index over them, because the thing that we need is the block store part of being able to get items as we're doing that. That wasn't something that carbs did. Carbs would take a static car and would generate an index over it so that it could function as a read-only block store. But I did a first pass at an implementation of a thing that will also support put by appending them on and appending to a insertion sort based index, so that you can do that, and then you can get a single car and carbs at the end. It does make an invalid car in that it does not put any roots in the header unless you specify them in advance, so I guess you can make a valid car, but you can also make an invalid car. You can also just sort of put blocks that aren't referenced anywhere, so that could be bad. You can also put them in some weird order that isn't the same order that a traversal would end up putting them in. So it's not necessarily going to hash the same thing. So you may still need to do a read over that car with its index into another car, if you want to make sure that your hashes match what you would expect for like we have a single canonical thing that this data ends. It sounds like the current Go data transfer does receive blocks in order, and so you could directly do this and skip the additional read and write, but you might want to at least verify. So there's some other work in sort of how you use this. It has sharp edges, but yeah, seemed like a relevant thing to do on cars. There's a conversation going on like, is this enough? Do we want to do the DAR based thing? And where is that all heading? Or car V2 or whatever. So there continues to be some conversation on cars. I think if you're interested in that discussion, Rahul is probably going to continue to be the point person. That's it for me.
Thanks. Then I have an agenda item which is not super exciting because we've talked about it briefly last week, but I wanted to make it official. So we've talked about if we should make this meeting really, so we skipped last week, if we should do this meeting every 2 weeks only. So I now would like to ask officially, like, should we do this meeting only every 2 weeks as we don't have that many updates? So is this a yes? Okay. So I will make sure to basically update the README and the calendar invite and all those things. And I will call it the every 2 weeks meeting to make Rod happy. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, so that's all I have. Are there any other things?
Will, do you want to just talk through some of the stuff that you raised? I don't know if
if you've got responses.
Most of them are. I've looked at that PR where you have the 2 different kinds of nodes, and they're both the word node in the Golang contract, and I agree that that is confusing and sucks. I don't know what we should do about it, though. It's kind of also the truth of the matter. Like, you've got these 2 data model trees, and like, and that's just what you've got.
It's like, just sort of unfortunate.
Yeah.
I mean, we put in names of the variables, and that helps.
Right. But like the Golang type checker can't really do anything useful to help you either, because like that selector node tree. Where have you been able to verify this, right? And how can we tell the compiler about it?
I don't think I care. I'm not trying to get Rust level static typing. It's much more for the programmer who's using it, right? Of like, just it's very clear to them which order to put the arguments when they call this method. Like that's a thing for the person, not for the.
You could use the Golang type alias feature if it made you feel good, but it wouldn't check a dang thing. So, yeah. I don't think we would want to make the parsed selector type hang on to that whole tree unconditionally either, because that's just like,
I see. Yeah.
Be weirdly high overhead if you didn't want it. On DAG.json bytes, so yes, there's definitely a missing feature in the Go IPLD prime codec implementation here. Were you able to narrow down whether the legacy feature in IPFS that we're trying to support, does it actually match the way that we updated the DAG.json spec to describe these bytes, or is it close? Or is it not at all close? I thought that there was some API that took some JSON-like thing and it happened to have a way of representing bytes, but it wasn't necessarily the same as what the DAG.json spec actually stated.
I have not looked. I tried it in the way that the spec stated, and I did not get bytes out.
Oh, okay. I thought this was more complicated than it is then.
And I gave up and handcrafted some CBOR and used CBOR as my example instead.
I guess it might. So just remember that also Rod tried to nail this down, because I even can't recall like what we agreed on. Like, should it now be with multi-base or not, and stuff like this. So I'm even not sure if the spec.
We all agreed that that part we're going to ditch, because introducing more multi-base varieties just made it harder for us to have a canonical form, and nobody liked it.
And the point was not that you can have different multi-bases, but should the, so we agreed on the binary form should be base 64. But the question was, should the base encoded thing have the first byte prefix as a multi-base or not? It was one discussion. And as I said, I can't recall the outcome, but I think Rod has an opinion. So anyway, so just if anyone implements it, just be prepared that you might change this first byte at one point, and yeah, whatever we decided or decide.
I think that we should just force that decision immediately and then stick with it. This is also one of the things that's currently an open PR in the specs repo, which I just discovered during my re-review of which things I need to chase people about. And so, yeah, there are now multiple reasons why I want that to be decided and land.
Yes, but I would I would happily defer this decision to Rod. So I don't care what it is, but Rod should make this decision, because like he spent a lot of time on it.
It's his PR, so yes, I'm going to bother him specifically.
Yeah, so he should so I'm happy with whatever he put so much thought into it. So I'm happy on that, but he should make the decision, because he spent so much time on it. Yeah, cool. Was this loop were those all the items we had? I guess so.
I think so.
Anything else?
Well, the carbon indexing thing you're doing is cool. That is all.
There's another couple implementations that we probably should also write, so that we can do a speed comparison and figure out what actually makes sense in terms of how to minimize system calls overhead. So
is this basically an index over, so it's a car file that also has an index?
Yep.
Okay. I should check it out, as I've spent a decade on indexing, so.
It's not a very...
Yeah.
I was going to say it's an external index. It's not part of the car file itself.
There's a separate file that will be named the same as the car file with an a.ipx, and that contains a map of SID to their offset in the car file.
Okay. Cool. And it's just the SID in the offset, so nothing fancy. Okay.
It allows, I don't know if I should register this in multi-codec or something, but I use a first byte UVariant to select what type of format it is, because I tried a few different ones. I think I didn't overlap with the space of other multi things.
Okay.
But like you can serialize that just as like a fixed width if you know that all of your SIDs are the same hash. Then you can just say, great, for this file, it's going to be like 32 bytes of hash and then 8 bytes of offset. And now you can stride it very easily. If they're different, if you've got multiple types of hashes, then you can't do that, of course. So it's got a sort of a selector at the very beginning of like, is this one where you can do the striding on? Or is this just like, we put it in a hash map and we call it gob hash on it, and it's whatever crazy thing Golang has decided to represent it in as its memory? Or is it so like, there were a few different ones I tried to get relative size and performance.
Okay. And is the Yeah, because so I was asking because like when I did some indexing stuff, I did, for example, only store the like the smallest not common prefix of the CIDs of the file.
So I'm not doing any
Because-
of that coolness
Yeah.
yet.
So just
But another index could certainly
yeah
do
you
that,
could
because then it'll look up and verify it in the actual car based on the offset it
exactly,
gets
yeah,
out of the
yeah.
index. So yes, you could make something that's smaller
Yeah.
by just doing useful prefixes.
Yeah. But I also guess like the case is not like huge data sets. Like the use case is not having.
I wouldn't be so sure about that.
Okay, because like if you store the CID and the index, you basically store the CID twice, right?
Yep.
Okay, which might be.
But I think we're going to want the whole CIDs in the index, depending on the use. For local lookups, you don't need it. If this is an index that you want to give to some other node to be able to then know what you have, you probably want to give it the whole CIDs.
Oh, if you only care about the CIDs.
So if you're trying to export your content discovery side things of like, what is on this node? Can I just give you an index? Which is essentially, at that point, all I need to give you is the list of CIDs. But hey, I've got this convenient thing already that is the list of CIDs and then some ints, but you don't care about the ints, but hey, this is basically the list of CIDs that you care about. So depending on purpose, yes, I agree.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Although even then, I'm not sure if you really. Anyway, yeah, it's a separate discussion, but yeah, it's like also like yeah, you can certainly add those things. So if you end up with the problem of the index is too big, you can of course do something about it. But as long as it's not a problem, it's not a problem.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. Anyway, in case you ever end up with you wanted the smallest prefix, the code is already there in Rust and in Go. So just
Awesome.
Yeah. And it was trickier than I thought actually, which is also, so it has tests because it was like, yeah, I screwed up a few times. So,
well, pull requests welcome to add an additional, more efficient index.
Yeah, cool. All right. Okay, cool. I think then if there isn't anything else, I close the meeting and see you all again in 2 weeks, which is the 26th of April.